Hello, and welcome to Merlin's Manor for another Game Mechanic Monday. This is a series where I talk about various game mechanics and the games that do those mechanics well. The mechanism I'd like to talk about today is the rondel. Now, what is a rondel? A rondel is a circular object, and when it comes to board games, a rondel is typically an action selection mechanism where you go around in a circle in order to select an action. Often you have a piece that is going around in that circle, and where it stops is where you'll take an action. Sometimes this piece is shared by players, and sometimes it is your own personal piece. Also, sometimes a rondel is shared by players, and sometimes a player has their own personal rondel. Typically, a rondel keeps you from being able to take certain actions that have been recently passed over, but later on you'll come back around to have an opportunity to take those actions. Now, how far around the circle you move and how that is decided also varies from game to game. In order to get a better understanding of how this rondel system works, let's consider a few games that do the rondel mechanism well. And the first one I want to bring up is Tiny Epic Pirates, as this is the game that really first got me interested in this mechanism. And while this is not one of my favorite games overall, I really like how the rondel works in this game. You have your own personal rondel in front of you, which represents 6 actions that you can take in the game, and your captain advances 1 spot for free on your turn. If you'd rather do a different action, then you must place a deckhand on each spot you wish to skip. When you move these deckhands, then they will no longer gain the benefit from the space you move them from, so you're giving up a potential benefit in order to skip a space. You will not get these workers back until you circle back around to them later. Now, after selecting your order, then you will move your ship generally to a space where that order can be carried out. Otherwise, you'll be wasting the turn, not doing anything other than moving. And then the rondel also has a line on it that if you cross this line with your captain when selecting your orders, it will trigger getting gold equal to the deckhands that you have on the extort part of your board, and then merchant ships and the navy ship will move. So that is Tiny Epic Pirates. The next game I want to talk about is New York Zoo. In this game, you are trying to be the first one to fill your zoo, and in order to do this, you'll be selecting and placing tiles. To select tiles, you'll move an elephant token either 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 spaces, depending on the player count, and they're taking the top tile from that location to put onto your board. You also have the option of landing on an animal acquisition space to place animals in your zoo. This is a shared rondel, and sometimes you are hoping others don't move too far so as not to pass a piece you want, or sometimes you hope others will move it a lot more to get far around that rondel to a piece that you want to have access to before your next turn. The rondel also has spaces that you do not land on, but which trigger animal breeding for everyone who has at least 2 of the animal in a shared enclosure when it gets passed. Now, getting animals is important because you fill up an enclosure with animals, then you get to select a free special tile to place into your zoo. This rondel system is an engaging way to do tile drafting and provides an incentive to get certain animals into your zoo before their breeding space gets crossed. Now, the next game I want to talk about is another polyomino placement game, and that is Patchwork. Patchwork is a game for 2 players, and it uses the rondel in a very similar manner as New York Zoo, in that you have a circle of tiles, and on your turn you can move a pawn up to 3 spaces and take the tile and place the pawn in its space. The game adds an additional wrinkle into the rondel system in that you don't necessarily alternate turns. The tile you take indicates how much time you must advance on a time track, and if you're behind your opponent still, then you keep taking your turns until you pass your opponent on that track. So you could intentionally take a few tokens that require less time to set yourself up for grabbing multiple tokens. Or if there are not any tokens you want coming up, maybe you grab that token that will use more time, as it will probably be a more valuable token, and then maybe your opponent takes a few turns around that rondel, bringing you closer to a piece that you want. This rondel system provides tension as you are hoping to be within range of certain tiles, but you don't know how far the other person will move, or if they'll take lower time tiles, enabling them to take multiple turns before your next turn. Now, the next game I want to talk about is Red Cathedral. In the Red Cathedral, you have spots that give a benefit, and there'll be dice on those spots. You will select a die on a spot and then use the number on the die to move that many spaces, and then claim the benefit of the spot you move to. Sometimes the die faces just don't have the right numbers to get where you really want to go, and barring an ability to adjust the movement number, then you're stuck figuring out an alternate plan. A die also cannot end on a space where there's already 3 dice. The number of dice on location moved to also multiplies the number of resources you'll receive. And then at the end of your turn, you roll all the dice at the location you utilize, so those dice will be randomized for future turns. And sometimes someone was hoping to use the die where you moved to for the number that was on it, and now it's a different number because you rolled them. Or the alternate can happen where all of a sudden the die is just the right number for the movement they want. I really enjoy how the Rondel system determines what resources you are able to get, and with dice already there, what quantities you will receive. And you can add to the movement by paying rubles if the die is a white die or a die of your color, so adjustments can sometimes be made. However, you have to decide if it's worth the cost. Plus, you can only add movement, not subtract movement. So if the die already takes you past the spot you wanted, then it's not going to be very helpful to be able to move it any differently. The final game I want to talk about now that does the Rondel system well is Three Sisters. Now, Three Sisters is a roll and write game that utilizes a Rondel action selection. The active player rolls the dice and places the dice out with the lowest number where the meeple is on the rondel, and the next lowest in the next space, and so on. So if you roll 2 ones, they'd be in the first space, a 3 might be in the second space, and then 3 fours might be in the third place. Then the meeple will be moved to the space after where the dice went. Sometimes the dice will be more spread out than others, allowing for more options, or allowing for more opportunities for people to take the same action when they're not spread out. The players take turns selecting a die and using it for both a garden action and the rondel action. The garden action allows you to plant 2 crops in the zone indicated by the die number, or to water crops in that die number zone. Then the rondel action will either be a second garden action, filling in a shed box, getting compost and goods, filling a box on the fruit or the apiary tracks, or the farmer's market. Sometimes you find yourself having to decide between the number you want for the garden action versus the spot you want to utilize the rondel action. There will also be 2 dice left over that after all players have chosen, everyone will get to use the lowest remaining die for another garden and rondel action. Now, if a player has 2 actions that they want to take, they might try to guess what others might take and hope that that second action is left over and is the lowest die remaining, so they get to take that action as well. So these are 5 games that do the rondel mechanism well. What are the games that you think do this mechanism well? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and this is a series I really enjoy doing. If you haven't already done so, check out some of these other videos about other various game mechanics, and also subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Have a great week, and game on.